Well, there we go. A few people with some very choice dinners this evening, by the look of it. Although I do feel by reading that Mr. Gatsby's had his dinner in a restaurant rather than at home. Either after he's taken or he's had his dinner in the middle of an episode of MasterChef. Big shout though to the Hunter's Chicken. Personal favourite for life, that one. Croque Madame was the dinner of choice here. His wife was cooking, and she wanted it, so she made it. It's the short version. We will fade that out. Bin that off there. Let's hit the button. Here we go. A little bit too high there. Let's just pull that way. Just a smidgen. Just a smidgen. Yeah, sorry about that, Karen. The thing that I have to remind myself of is I'm about a minute or so, somewhere between like 30 and 60 seconds ahead of you in the chat. So I'm talking away, the levels look fine, and then I forget sometimes the music is not quite as loud as the microphone. So I have to remind myself of that sometimes. However, it's not gone completely wrong yet, is what I keep telling myself. Obviously been fiddling around with the settings, and obviously been tinkering and tottering and all those kind of bits and pieces, but it's looking promising so far. We will see. What you can't see, and this is to kind of go behind the scenes before I do the actual proper intro. If you've never used OBS before, which is the software I use to stream, there's some settings down in the bottom right of my screen right now, which tells me how many frames per second I'm using, but also how much of my CPU is being used. Last week, it was using between 50 and 60% of my CPU power. Right now, it's using 25, which is a bit of a difference. So clearly, some of the stuff I've been tinkering around with has been working. Either way, it's time to rock and roll. Guys, gals, and the gender fluid and all beyond the binary, it is Wednesday night, it is 8 PM, and welcome back once again to the BOTW What's Current stream. My name is Anthony Russell, here once again to take you through the wild, wonderful, and wacky world that is the National Ice Hockey League structure here in Great Britain. We focus on the National Division, that is our bread and butter, that is our home port, but of course we take a moment to look through absolutely everything and anything that happened across the NIHL. That means the National Division, as well as Division 1 and Division 2 in the north, and in the south. Hope everyone is doing well. The big news as we kick off this evening's bits and pieces is, of course, that it is currently in the second period of the National League Cup semi-final between the Hull Seahawks and the Leeds Knights. Currently 2 goals apiece at the world's most versatile arena. Nathan Salem and Emil Tzvek for the Seahawks, Kieran Brown and Matt Howlett scoring for the Leeds Knights. I know, what a crushing surprise that is for everybody right now. Also, thank you to Andrew Day for putting it in the chat. Already 6-0 up from the first leg in Coventry. The Sheffield Steelers lead the Coventry Blaze by 1-0 in the second leg at the House of Steel. A 7-0 aggregate win. The aggregate lead, for the Steelers. That event they put up on Facebook earlier, clearly maybe not quite so much foreshadowing anything. We all knew where that one was going to go. Either way, before we kick off the show too much, usual bit of housekeeping of bits and pieces. Bannersonthewall.wordpress.com for over a decade now, your number one source for all things all things my writing related, but certainly for the last couple of years, the best place and the best source for all things related to the NIHL. Of course, used to write a lot about the Basingstoke Bison, but where the Bison have now wandered off into the mist, I am on my journey through the NIHL this year, and last Sunday, well, I had a bit of a weekend of it, having made the decision to go to Basingstoke for the Cup semi-final second leg. That was postponed, and we don't know what's happening with it at the moment. We'll talk about that in a bit. But I found myself in Oxford on Sunday for the only league fixture one of the only league fixtures happening this past weekend. The Oxford City Stars, the MK Thunder. We'll talk about that more in a little bit as well when we get to our score roundups from the other divisions. But one of the longest pieces I've written this season, and for me, one of the most interesting and exciting games of hockey I've watched this year. When I consider some of the games I've watched from levels above that were definitely nowhere near as interesting and didn't give me as much to kind of get my teeth into as a writer, this game gave me tons and tons to talk about, which I absolutely love. But there's that, as well as a bunch of other bits and pieces that you can read, listen to, and enjoy over on bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. And the other thing, of course, is we are live Wednesday night. It's just after 8 p.m. That means we're here on YouTube. If you're here on the catch-up, come join us on a Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. if you get the opportunity, because, of course, that means you get to join in with the chat, which is all over there on the right-hand side. This isn't a monologue, this is a conversation between all of us as we chat through the bits and pieces in hockey. All that I ask is that if you are using the chat function, you do remember the golden rule here at the What's Current stream. That is DBAD. Don't be a dick. Be respectful of other people's thoughts and feelings. We are going to have an absolutely wonderful time. But if you want to chuck stuff in the chat, please do. Thoughts, feelings, comments, questions, anything you want to chuck in. We'll touch on as much as we possibly can over the next hour and a bit here on the show. Well, like we said, it's currently, well, it was 2-2. He says quickly refreshing his screen, albeit though the Seahawks have just gone onto the power play, I noticed. But the first big thing we obviously need to talk about was new logo for the show that you'll have seen pop up. I did tweet about it earlier today. Max van Mullum, who is a young man who is actually a netminder in the Guildford junior system. I was contacted via a friend that I know. His mum got in contact with me. Max, aside from the fact he is a young netminder, is also got a passion for graphic design and doing bits and pieces. He and his mum contacted me and saying, I want to get my bits and pieces out there. I want to kind of get seen. Is there anything I could design for you? So I gave him some ideas as to what he could do. And ultimately, I started BOTW as an idiot with a passion, which was for writing. And this young man clearly got a passion for his graphic design as well as his ice hockey. So I've said that, if he wants to create some bits and pieces of the show, he can do. What we're going to see from Max is some graphic bits and pieces going forward. We're starting off small because he is a young man. He's still a teenager and he's obviously got a lot of stuff going on in his life. So we're starting off small with Max's contributions and we're going to see that build up. But the first of those contributions is this brand new, really, really awesome sort of title plate that he's made for the stream. So not just kind of rehashing the same logo again and again. But really pleased, massive thanks to Max, massive thanks to his mum Tanya as well for the help in kind of getting all these bits and pieces sorted. So that's there. I think it looks really cool. So a massive, massive pleasure to have Max on board here at Team BOTW. And of course, for those of you who don't remember, shout out to Joe Chatterton. He's the one who's done most of the graphics and stuff that we use here on the show. Otherwise, we got that semi-final rocking on at the moment. But there has been some signing news in Division 2, which is pretty huge in the grand scheme of things, and that is a return to the ice for Adam Jones, former National Division All-Star. Massive presence in the old EPL, played briefly in the Elite League as well, has had some time out of hockey. Of course, he signed for the Bison for 23-24 and never appeared, injured in pre-season and was never seen. And aside from injuries, health issues kept Jones off the ice for quite some time. He missed the back end of 22-23 as well because of those injury problems. However, he's been coaxed slowly, very, very slowly, out of his medical induced absence, and he is now back on the ice with the Basingstoke Buffalo. Former teammates Hallam Wilson and Paul Petts managing to entice a man who at the time was one of the premier British defencemen in the National League to come out of retirement and ease his way back into hockey by playing in South 2 with the Buffalo. That is a pretty big sign. And for me, and this isn't to do a disservice to any players there, but Adam Jones immediately kind of stands out as arguably the premier player in that division in terms of his overall ability. A lot must be said there about the fact, a lot of us will have seen a lot of Adam Jones for quite some time, whether it was for Guildford, whether it was for very briefly for Belfast, but Telford, Basingstoke, played in Swindon, of course, during the COVID series. Adam Jones is no stranger to a lot of people who will be watching this show. For a player of that calibre, albeit coming off a lengthy layoff due to injury, for him to be playing in South 2 is a huge, huge get for the Buffalo. When you think, of course, that maybe the league is just a little out of the Buffalo's reach, but with a cup semi-final potentially, sort of, looming. But more importantly for the Buffalo, with the playoffs looking very, very much within their gifting this year, a player of Adam Jones's quality to add on to that back end. When you think about some of the other guys for the Buffalo on their blue line, Carl Graham, of course, has had a really, really good year. Tom Banner, of course, has come back onto that roster, having been released by Oxford earlier in the campaign. And now to add in Adam Jones, who played alongside Banner for long stretches in Basingstoke. That is a marked moment for this division, because if the Buffalo find a way to get Jones settled, stay healthy, and to play, that is a man who could put up very, very silly numbers in a very short space of time, given his quality. The flip side of that, of course, is that when you bring a player of really high quality into a league that is a bit slower, a bit more, not where the hockey IQ of the players isn't quite as high, is will Jones almost be a step too quick in terms of his thinking? I always call it the old Darren Anderton syndrome. And Darren Anderton, former England international, former Spurs, former Portsmouth, and he obviously had his issues with injuries during his career. And towards the end of his career, he signed for AFC Bournemouth when the team were in League One. And so often he would have an idea and put a ball into a place where nobody else was thinking of going, because only he could think to put a ball there at that moment. And players around him were either not thinking the same or not quick enough to put themselves in the right position. How will this work for the Buffalo? I don't really know. However, what you venture is that Jones immediately will go into the top four on the back end, if not be on that top pairing. I venture we'll probably see a chunk of him alongside Tom Banner, because they have worked together really well in the past. Banner much more of a defensive defenseman. Jones very, very keen to lead the breakout, big outlet passes, put shots on net. That kind of combination worked really, really well for the Bison. So the fact that they'd be able to kind of recreate that down in South 2, 2 levels below the National Division. Jones has cheat code level ability at this division, but it's got to gel and it's got to work. And most importantly for the Buffalo, Jones needs to play, and he needs to play every game from now on to the end of the season to qualify for the playoffs. Because this ultimately for the Buffalo is a playoff signing to push them over the line. This is the equivalent of trading at the deadline, because of course the deadline is today for NHL signings. So certainly in terms of being able to play enough games to qualify for the playoffs, if the Buffalo can get Jones to settle, this could be big. And if you think as well about a full strength Buffalo side, if you bring in as well Hemmingsmeyer and Roman Cathcart, we can't only delete to one side because, of course, Slough are going gangbusters in Div 1. But bringing in Alex Sanford, Wilson, Petts, Banner on the back end, Graham on the back end, but as well, some of these really good young guys who are more Buffalo stalwarts. Having Cam Buckle, Xander Robinson. I'm trying to think of some. My brain went blank there for a second. Morgan Parsons in net, of course, is having to deputise for Dan Weller Evans. This isn't a team of just guys they've pulled in from the National Division. There's a mix in there. Young guys who've come up, old guys who've gone away and come back, and do some bits and pieces. So we should hopefully be able to see a solid Buffalo side going forward if we are able to kind of figure that one out. 2-0 Blaze on the night. 8-0 aggregate at the end of the fourth period of action there between the Blaze and the Blaze and the Steelers. This feels like it could be a very long night for Coventry related folk, but hopefully something will. Maybe let's see if the Blaze can get at least one on that front. That'd be great to see. In terms of other news, of course, like I say, it has been a pretty sort of odd, there's been a few odd bits this week, but been for the most part relatively quiet. What we will do though, what we're going to do is we are just going to very quickly just going to cheat and look at the new stuff, because as I said, Max has been creating some stuff for us. If I click on that, Of course, we got the games coming up this upcoming weekend. Of course, the big thing right now is the this cup semi-final between Hull and Leeds. Now where Milton Keynes and Swindon, of course, Milton Keynes losing 3-2 in Swindon in that first leg. They're likely to host that second leg in the next little while. But Hull and Leeds have got their act together. First leg is tonight, and the second leg, as you can see, is there this coming Friday at the Castle. 7:30 face-off between the Knights and the Seahawks. Still 2-2 with half of that first game gone. But we will be able to see on Friday night who will be the first team into that cup final. So even though they started afterwards, they will finish before, and one of Leeds or Hull will be Yorkshire's representative in the cup final. We then, of course, just have a look onto Saturday. We've got a good mix of fixtures. Max has not put the face-off times on there, but we will touch on those in a little bit when we look back at the fixtures from last weekend. But obviously a very, very busy period this for the Knights. We can see they're at home against the Raiders on Saturday as well. So back-to-back home games there for the Knights. Whereas MK looking to keep pace with the Knights, of course, there is quite a sizable gap between the two sides at the moment. But MK are at home against Solway. Elsewhere, the Bees take on the Steel Dogs in what could be a big game for both sides at that bottom end, looking towards playoff placings. Bristol host Telford in what could be a bit of a banana skin for the Tigers, but where the Pitbulls' form has been so up and down. We know the Pitbulls can score goals, but they can't stop them leaking in, and that's been an issue at the moment. And then at the bottom there, of course, the last game to mention, what should be a very, very entertaining game between the Swindon Wildcats and the Peterborough Phantoms. Obviously, Swindon's fantastic recent run of form has seen them leap over Peterborough, who've been a bit patchier, had a few injuries and bits and pieces to contend with, as well as not having the best of forms. But they, of course, had a pretty sizable win on Sunday with an appearance in net from Tyler Delapertouche, one of the young up-and-comers on the scene there. But that's the sort of stuff that Max is going to be doing for the stream going forward. Some ideas and some bits and pieces in terms of just giving stuff a bit more of a graphical pop. And that's nothing, of course, against the fantasticness of NIHL stats, which we're just going to go back and look at momentarily there. But one thing, like I said, that's the kind of thing that Max is going to be providing for the stream going forward, and just to kind of help things pop out a little bit, make things a bit more visually friendly, especially, of course, for bits and pieces that we're doing here on YouTube. But that does not mean, of course, we will not revert back to what we know, which is the joy of NIHL stats. Click a few buttons. Hopefully everything's going to go around. See, now everything's going very, very heavy on my CPU, but it should hopefully last out a little bit. But of course, we just need to look back at the games from last weekend in the division, which, of course, the big game was last Friday evening. I know a lot of people were watching, and you might have seen the super secret, not really super secret at all, because I told everybody I was doing it, but we did a little bit of an experiment. A bit of a sidecast on Leeds' game against MK. I have to confess, I seem to think this game wasn't anywhere as near as close as anybody thought it was. I felt that scoreline, that 3-2 scoreline, I felt it flattered the Lightning by the end of it. Leeds, to me, showed why they are the premier team in this division. It felt like they were holding MK at bay a bit, and ultimately it was very, very clear who was going to win that game from about the 25-minute mark, to me. That has not gone down well with some MK fans. That's absolutely fine. Disagreement is not disaster. But the big issue that it leaves now, of course, is that Leeds are quite some distance ahead with the game in hand. And of course, the other big issue from last weekend is Romford didn't play. Those two games that the Raiders had between themselves and Leeds and themselves and Bristol cancelled due to a Zamboni issue at the Sapphire, meaning that teams were... those games were unable to play. So that is more games in hand for Leeds. The flip side of that, of course, is that that's more games Leeds have got to fit in somewhere where they do not, where they are going to have to really, really play a lot of hockey in a really short space of time to maintain the pace that they are at. The However, they've built up such a lead, they're getting themselves into a position where they don't need to win 5 of 5. They don't even need to win sometimes 4 of 5. They're getting themselves into a position where they can win 3 of 5. Gospel easiest man of the match of the season. He was the main difference. I felt the issue for me, Jamie, for MK, was that they just didn't look like they could trouble Gospel. And there's the problem, is that Sam Gospel is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but he wasn't made to move. He wasn't made to think too hard. And there's the bigger problem. It's all well and good mentioning to people that, saying to people that, he was the difference. And he certainly is, because he is a better netminder than Will Curlin. I don't think any of us would dispute that. Albeit, I think it was the right choice to play Curlin. Jordan Headley just coming back off of injury. You don't want to throw a guy into there. And also, given the fact that he played so many minutes and had got himself to that position, Curlin deserved to have that opportunity to play on that Friday evening. But for me, I know the scoreline says 3-2, but this doesn't feel like a 3-2 game to me. I felt Leeds were comfortable for large stretches of this game. Big shout out to Mark Rackham, of course. He's popped into the chat asking about the Sobol rink in London. Of course, there were some discussions about it being closed. It is still open at the moment, as far as I'm aware. And shout out to Mark, of course. Mark, the host of Hockey from Across the Pond. Mark has called time on that podcast and just deciding to move on and do other bits and pieces with his time. So, obviously, we wish Mark all the best. There was, Hockey from Across the Pond was it was a great show in terms of the fact that it was unapologetically what it was. It talked about the things that Mark wanted to talk about, which was the AHL. When Caitlin helped host the show, there was OHL on there. Mark has always been a big blower of the trumpet for the national team, particularly Liam Kirk, people like Liam Steele as well, making sure those young British players weren't forgotten about when they were sort of in different or difficult situations. So big shout to Mark. All the best for whatever comes next for you, mate. Go to Invicta, go watch a game. Go watch hockey on your doorstep. 3-2 to Hull, I can see there from Mr. Day. Owen Brutton with the goal. I kept calling him Bruton. Apparently it's Brutton. I will apologise now. Brutton from Brock Bartholomew, who might be one of the best defensive signings of the season so far. He's been very, very effective for the Seahawks this season. Looking elsewhere from last weekend, of course, the Lightning did recover the next night by giving Peterborough a fantastic kicking. A much closer game than this could have been, of course, finishing up 8-3 to the Lightning at the end, who do what they usually do in these games, which is get themselves into a position and then push themselves away. Hull with a 4-1 win in Sheffield. We kind of know what's going on in Sheffield at the moment, but the Seahawks doing the professional job and getting themselves out of the way there. And then 8 goals for Cats, as it were. Swindon giving Solway another absolute kicking. 8-1, the final score there down at the Link Centre. For whatever reason, not only does Swindon have Solway's number, they just are effective against them. It's not even winning, it's winning by big margins. The Cats just seem to be well set up to deal with Martin Grubb's side this year. And the other game on Saturday, a much closer affair in Shropshire, but ultimately an 8-5 victory for the Telford Tigers over the Bees as they managed to wheedle their way past that one. But a solid showing from the Bees. Scoring 5 goals and losing is always frustrating, which is exactly what they did the next night when they turned things around. A back and forth seesaw of a game, but the Telford Tigers winning in regulation by 6 goals to 5, a 4-point weekend for Tommy Watkins' side to help solidify their place in the middle of the pack for the playoffs. And Solway then with their on this big long road stretch, no home games for the Sharks for the next couple of weeks. Down in Bristol then on Sunday, and in a game that they kind of needed to win after their heavy defeat the following night, the Sharks get the win and head back up the M6 to Dumfries with a 5-3 victory. A big and important game there for the Sharks as they look to keep their place at the bottom of the playoff pack. A 4-point weekend, though, for the Seahawks. They end the Swindon Wildcats' very, very good run and giving them some momentum, of course, heading into tonight. A 6-2 win for the Seahawks. All things end, Wildcats fans being relatively philosophical about it. Obviously disappointed to lose. Nobody likes to lose. However, being able to go on such a good run, it was always going to end at some point. It ended on Sunday at the World's Most Versatile Arena. And then Peterborough recovered, conceding 8 goals on the Saturday. They then score 11 on the Sunday and put an absolute boot to the Sheffield Steel Dogs, whose poor run of form continues. He says, pressing buttons, hoping things work. There we go. Let's get the table up. Well, there we are. There is the league table for the National Division, and it is all advantaged Leeds, even though they are putting themselves in a very tough position with the amount of games to make up. 59 points from 34, 2 games in hand over the MK Lightning, and a 5-point gap into the bargain. If it wasn't advantaged Leeds to retain their title, if I was a bookmaker, I'd stop taking bets at this point. Swindon then in third. They are 4 points back on the Lightning with a game in hand. And the Seahawks in fourth with 45 from 35. Peterborough in fifth then, 43 from 36. Of course, off the back of that bizarre interview from Slava Kulikov a couple of weeks ago, talking about the fact they're not interested in the league anymore. Clearly his sights are on the playoffs, it seems. A big drop down then, of course, the top 5 with a sizable gap over the rest. Telford in 6th, 36 from 36. Solway 33 from 37, and Raiders in the last playoff spot 29 from 35. So games in hand when it comes to making sure that final playoff spot is secure. The Bees then in 9th, 28 from 36. The Steel Dogs 24 from 36, and the Pitbulls are bottom of the table still, 18 points from 36 games. The Steel Dogs and the Pitbulls slowly dropping away. The Bees, well, they're behind the 8 ball a little bit, but are in a position where they can still make the postseason with some ease if results go their way. Questions, comments, thoughts, feelings. What are we all thinking about stuff in the National Division at the moment? 3-2, Matty Davies' side lead. Good evening, Charlotte. Thank you for joining us. Even if you are late, you can pay the fine later. One of the best MK periods of the season in the second on Saturday versus Peterborough, which is what you want from in a derby game, of course. MK and Peterborough, of course. Fierce-ish local rivals, but of course, irrespective of what's going on with those two sides, they do love to beat each other. From Saturday, we do need to talk about the games on Sunday, because of course we have the lovely graphics for Saturday, but because, like I say, we're not rushing Max into anything at this point, so we do need to talk. We'll just quickly, like I say, whiz through the fixtures for this upcoming weekend. Of course, we talked about Friday and Saturday, so we'll just quickly look at Sunday the 4th of February. He says, remembering what month we're in. Hull and Bristol meet at the World's Most Versatile Arena on Sunday. That's at 5:30. As is Peterborough versus MK, another big game, another potential banana skin for the at 6:30 p.m. in Swindon, and the traditional 4:30 face-off in Sheffield for the Steel Dogs and the Bees, and 6 p.m. on a Sunday in town. MK crowds have not dropped below 2,300 since Christmas. Well, that's pretty good to hear. Hopefully that's not papered, as it were, and is ticketed appropriately. Thoughts anywhere else at this point, unless Bristol threw stupid money at him, and even then, I'm not convinced he'd go. It should be said, but this is one. It's an interesting point to announce it. I'm not quite sure why they'd announce it now, but Swindon kind of do things in terms of their announcements in their own way. It's not a big surprise, but such is the way of things. Swindon announce things when they're going to announce things. They're odd like that. Can see Ben from Zero Pucks Given is in the chat. Of course, do make sure you go and check out Ben's latest episode. If you're interested in stuff from South One, he's got an interview with Alex Murray from the Solent Devils. I will be catching up with Alex at the end of the season. So definitely, if you're interested in kind of a good perspective on where things are now, check out what Ben's doing. Always has some great interviews with folk out of not just out of South One, but also out of sort of attached bits and pieces with women's hockey. Always get some interesting folk on, so make sure you check out what Ben's doing. Zero Pucks Given. Find it on all of your usual platforms if you need to. He says, looking to see whether we've got to the end of the period. We haven't yet. because there's some penalties that have been had. Knights on the power play though, so that's never bodes well for any team anywhere ever. What we are going to do is we're going to click some buttons. This is the thing, with so few games, there's less to kind of talk about. There's less to kind of talk about at a point like this. What we will do, however, is we will have a quick look, of course, at the Cup semi-finals from across the NIHL divisions 1 and 2, and we will start in the north, which of course is relatively straightforward games, all in all, because it was a pretty straightforward march into the final, especially for the ridiculous Jets fashion. They did manage to pull out a very good performance at home. 2-2 is the Billingham, of course, have not lost, but that means they didn't win a game for the first time in quite some time this season. But we all know what the whole Jets away form has been like this season. I said on Sunday morning that they needed to pull out the best away performance of their season. They did not. Ultimately, Billingham giving them an absolute stamping, 12-3, the final score on Sunday, meaning that Billingham march into the final with a 14-5 aggregate win. And then it was the 2-seed and the 3-seed, Solihull and Blackburn, but Blackburn are the ones who've been in the ascendancy recently, and pretty convincing wins all round. A 7-3 win at Hobbs Moat Road on Saturday, combined with a 7-3 win at home, combined with a 6-4 win in Solihull on the Sunday. A 13-7 aggregate win for the Hawks, meaning it will be Billingham and Blackburn to compete in the final of the North 1 Cup. There are no dates as of yet, though there is a weekend set aside in February. I can just see there as well that Emil Svek has made it 4-2 to the Seahawks. Heading in the late in the second period there, 38-52 that goal. If Leeds lose the first leg at this point, at least it's not 6-0 and what happened in the final against Peterborough last year. Solihull missing Laverick, I guess, though. They were, but they are not just a one-man. They are not just a one-man team. And also, Karen, that Blackburn side is pretty good, all things considered. So that tie was always going to be a toss of a coin. If Hull had beaten Billingham, that would have been a big upset. Solihull or Blackburn beating each other at this point, less of a problem for me, in my personal opinion. We'll do the fixtures for everyone in a bit as we just look at the results from last weekend first. As we head into South 1, well, Streatham and Invicta actually managed to complete the games of hockey this weekend and not beat the ever-loving snot out of each other again, which was decent of them. But it was a tight first leg down in Kent on the Saturday. 2-2 until the very late stages, and a late winner from the Redhawks putting them 3-2 up, and then they themselves at times in an attempt to try and get Streatham. But in a cup semi-final situation, it meant fireworks in all directions. Fights, guys thrown out to be the big, that proves to be the big one here. Slough winning 6-3 at home on the Saturday at the Hangar, which meant going into Sunday that Chelmsford had the uphill climb. It finishes 4 goals apiece, but Chelmsford out of the cup at the semi-final stage this year, having made last year's final, which means we get first versus second in the league to decide the South 1 Cup. Streatham will take on Slough, and if you haven't been excited enough by these two teams this season anyway, that is going to be insane. The second period of Slough versus Chelmsford took 56 minutes to complete. That's pretty bad. Yes, 4-2 Hull. Hull starting to be a force at home. Thank God MK have played their 3 games up in Hull. Yes, Hull have had MK's number all season. If you think about if they'd won those 3 games, what sort of a position that they'd be in, Jamie, when it comes to the league title. But yes, Slough and Chelmsford are very, very different sides and are very, very entertaining in their own ways. I've seen them play apart and I've seen them play each other this season, so I'm really, really thankful for that. I appreciate as well there's folks up in the north. They are fascinating case studies against each other, watching the two of them kind of butt heads, as it were. And if nothing else, I could watch Sebastian Moore play every day for the rest of the time. That kid is something very, very special. It should be said. Streatham versus Slough then coming up at the end of February. In the Cup. We then go into North 2, which of course has been fully decided when we get to there. And it was much more of a tight affair in the 2 seed versus the 3 seed, as we envisioned it probably would be. Sutton and Coventry, again, much like Chelmsford and Slough have been chasing the way behind Streatham in South 1. In North 2, apologies, Sutton and Coventry have been hot on the heels of Telford, although maybe just a little bit of a step away. But Sutton showing their nous, showing their quality against a Blaze side that's unfamiliar with this kind of territory in the cup competition. A 3-1 win for the Sting in the first leg, a 3-2 win in the second, meaning that they had just enough to push themselves past the Blaze and into the cup final. The Sting, across the course of the season, have proven that they can just about keep pace, even though Telford are very clearly in the driving seat with everything. But Coventry, of course, remain so far the only team to beat the Tigers in this campaign. Sutton are going to need to beat them at least once to get the North 2 Cup off of Telford, who kicked the ever-loving snot out of the Sheffield Titans. There is no other 5 goals and still won 19-6 on aggregate. That is silly. That is very, very silly. The Tigers too are ridiculous. If Karen is in the chat, I'm sure she will give us a great lowdown as to what these games were like, because scoring 19 goals in 2 games is a pretty emphatic way to make a cup final, let alone to stamp their point onto where they will go during the league campaign. Lee, thanks for joining in. Surely Telford 2 should move to Division 1 next season. I think the issue with them moving to Div 1 next season is it will be commitment of the guys involved. I think is probably the issue there. Of course, the one thing we had in North 2 for a couple of years was the Hull Jets Telford Tigers 2 battle, which I think was a good thing for the league in a lot of ways. Sutton, of course, have really stepped up their game this year. Coventry have really stepped up their game this year, but they're not quite at the same level as Telford. But moving up comes with it additional travel, additional costs and bits and pieces like that. And if it's not going to be financially suitable for the Tigers, where if you think about it, Tigers 2 are not a separate club. Telford Tigers are, that one club, 2 teams philosophy. I would struggle to see them do it. On that front, there is a much more extended travel on that point, whereas actually it's better travel for them in North 2. And unless Telford were making a real push to kind of turn it into a more solid development option, I would expect Tigers 2 to be in Division 2 next year, if I'm honest. However, if you're a Telford fan, it's a conversation to have with Mike Washburn, with Tommy Watkins, Scott McKenzie, of course. Game 2 was a very scrappy game. Game 1 was much closer than the scoreline dictates. Better played from both teams. You can't tell me that was at 9-1 against him quite handily before this season that the scoreline wasn't where it was. I mean, the thing is, at 9-1, there's no coming back from that. So I'm not surprised the second leg was a bit of a scrappy one, all things considered. You can kind of forgive them for that one. And then there's South 2. And South 2, who ruined everything, because if we scroll down, we have with Guildford tried frantically to sort out having ice for Sunday. This weekend, of course, was blocked off for the cup semi-finals across the divisions. The issue that Guildford had was where Cardiff were unable to move it. Guildford looked at moving bits and pieces around so that they could play the second leg next weekend. That wasn't possible for them to do, and unfortunately what that meant for the semi-final between Guildford and Haringey was it became a 1-game shootout in Haringey at Alexandra Palace to decide who would make the cup final. Everybody was all in for a 1-game shootout, and the Guildford Phoenix knock out the Haringey Huskies to keep their perfect season alive for the moment. A 4-2 win. Haringey 2-1 up in this game as well, and then letting it slide. That late empty net goal, doing the business there for the Phoenix. In Peterborough then on Saturday, a tight, highly contested game, one with a decent amount of quality from what I'm told from people there. A 4-2 win for Peterborough against Basingstoke in the first leg, and then we were all ready for the second leg on Sunday in Basingstoke. I made lunch on Sunday, and then I had a nap, and then when I woke up from that nap, the game had been postponed. Plumbing issues and electrical issues in the rink in Basingstoke, meaning that the rink was not allowed to be open for the latter part of the day. And a chunk of this was just due to the fact of there wasn't enough toilets, there wasn't enough toilet facilities due to a problem with the plumbing. That meant that people would be allowed to be in the building, which meant that the game was postponed. And we have no answer at this point as to what's happening. I've spoken to the Buffalo today, as you can imagine, but they have had no answer. Because Peterborough are due to be in Basingstoke in league play on Sunday. The teams are trying to negotiate that being doubled up as the second leg of the cup final, of the cup semi-final, but it has not been decided whether that is going to happen or not. It is Wednesday night. It is 8:41 as I'm talking about this, and we have no decision as to whether they're going to allow it or not. This is also put into the fact that Basingstoke had a player ejected from the game on Saturday because he wasn't listed on the game sheet. Will Birch escorted out, asked to leave the bench because he wasn't listed on the game sheet. Now, Birch is an eligible player for the Buffalo. He is fully registered, but an admin error leaves him off the game sheet. Now, we've seen this happen in the past. We saw it happen in last year's North 1 Cup final between Billingham and Solway, where Sean Galloway was asked to leave the bench when it was noted that he was potentially off the game sheet. He was on the game sheet, but his name was close to somebody whose name had been crossed out, and somebody made an error and they said he had to leave the game. Ultimately, with that game tied at 5-5 after the first leg, Galloway 1+1 on the night, it should be said. Everything was just left as it was, and everybody moved on to Sunday evening. What happens with Basingstoke and Peterborough is yet to be decided. People who had tickets for last Sunday's game those tickets have been moved into this coming Sunday's league fixture, but we do not know what is happening with the South 2 Cup at this time. All we know is Guildford are playing somebody at some point. But what happens there, and will Guildford be able to get the requisite ice time again, we do not know, is the issue there. Because if we quickly have a scoot through the fixtures in South 2, because of course there was a game played on Sunday, because Guildford had to travel all the way down to Cardiff to take on the Fire. And as you will see, I did tweet about it earlier that they are human after all. The Guildford Phoenix lose their first game of the season. It took them until the end of January to do so. But the Cardiff Fire win by 5-4 and end the Phoenix's perfect run so far this season. 12 games won in a row for the Phoenix in league and cup semi-final competition. And now they find themselves with a 1. The last team across all the divisions to lose. However, irrespective of that fact, the Phoenix are still top over Haringey with 2 games in hand. The 13-1 record, irrespective, is nothing to be sniffed at. The other game then, of course, was the other league game, of course, was the one I attended in Oxford. 2 teams on the back end of big losing streaks. Oxford came into the game having lost 7 in a row. MK came into the game having lost 15 games in a row. They had not won since September when they beat the Romford Buccaneers. And there is the scoreline to look at. Oxford 3, MK Thunder 7. The 15-game losing streak is ended at the Ox Pens. And again, I turn up for a game in Oxford and the Stars lose. I'm really, really sorry. I can't do anything about it. It's definitely not my fault. Is what I'm saying there. I have written up this game on bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, so please do go check that out, because like I say, a fascinating game to watch. We've talked a lot on this show, and other people have talked in other quarters as well about the MK Thunder, and I still don't think that this game fully answers the question about what happens with the Thunder in terms of their being competitive across the course of the season. I think I worked it out, having looked at it, that heading into this game, their goal difference was minus 131 heading into this game. The question of whether the Thunder are of the requisite quality across the course of a season to be in South 1 is a discussion I think that needs to be had during the summer, especially if Haringey are going to step up as well. What difference is that going to make, and do MK potentially need to think about stepping down? Oxford are a team full of very good players that just cannot seem to play very well together, is the problem they have here. And all of the reasons why these two teams are in the position they're in came out in this game. Really, really easy to see why there was a problem for both of these teams. MK had Cam Hamill in, they had Ben Davies in, they had Dan Norton in goal. But irrespective of that, as a unit defensively, they do not have enough structure, and they spend so much time puck watching as to, against the better side. Even if they played with as much intensity and as much grit as they did on Sunday against a better team, they were losing that game. What they came up against was an Oxford side who just seemed unable to amend from the mistakes they kept making. Defence kept pushing too high. Like I said, I think I said in the piece, if they pushed any higher, they'd be out of the rink and onto the Botley Road. Oxford just were not putting enough quality shots on net. In the first and the third periods, they allowed themselves to just fall into MK's trap, and they were just able to absorb the pressure, allow the defence to allow everybody to push too high, put the puck past, go and score. There was direction, there was intent, there was guys getting in front of the net, there was guys doing things in the dirty areas, and it worked. A goal from Jan Kostel standing his ground in front of the goal, a goal from Danny Williams tipping the puck in, and one on a broken play that James Pentecost just slapped over the shoulder of Norton. But all goals scored from not let Norton see the puck. That's true, but there wasn't any want or will to kind of push themselves in further. And this is crazy, of course, because James Pentecost hit the post 10 seconds into this game. You can imagine what a different game that would have been if 10 seconds in, Oxford are a goal up. That would have been crazy. The owner of the Thunder is very insistent that the Thunder will not move down to South 2, which is infuriating to most MK fans. I'm just going to swap back off of this. I get why they don't move. I do get it, because they want to stand there and be involved in the level that they're at. The problem for MK that I think they could face is that the other teams may not want them after a while. And what happens when there is a big discussion, if there is a big discussion, and like I say, as far as we're aware, they announced their intention at the beginning of the season. 24-25 sees the Haringey Huskies step into Division 1. And will they want it as a 19 league? We've seen that it is doable, but it's awkward. What happens if the other teams turn around and need to step down? What happens in that space if that discussion is being had? And I mean, I'd love to have a conversation with the owner of the Thunder about it. I might actually ask them about it, but they and Oxford both reshare. I think that'd be pretty awesome to do. It'd be a great insight into a club that I think a lot of people don't quite understand. So that'd be cool. Fixtures. We need to look at fixtures. I'm just going to quickly have a swig of water. I don't know why, but my throat is very dry tonight. Just seeing there a tweet from Tommy Ralph. Of course, now considered. I'm pressing buttons to make sure things work. Oh. Let's click that. I've got South 1 up. So we're going to look at the fixtures coming up in South 1. So Saturday, because we'll start there, Oxford have a bit of an interesting turnaround. How can they respond from a terrible weekend last weekend? They take on Invicta in Kent on Saturday at 5:45. Romford take on Slough at 5:15 at Sapphire Ice and Leisure, if the Zamboni works. The big game, and where I'm initially intending to be on Saturday, Solent versus Streatham. There are some things that might put a spanner in my works, but I want to be in Gosport for this game. Always a cracking game between these two sides, and it's pretty much on my doorstep. Sunday, Chelmsford versus Solent, that should be good. Britain Cup game between Oxford and Invicta, so those two sides will go home and home this weekend. Streatham versus MK. Will MK win 2 in a row? I don't know. Super confident on that piece. If MK get a point out of that game, I will donate 20 quid to the charity of somebody's choosing on that front, because I will laugh myself silly if MK get anywhere close to overtime, being within spitting distance of that one. North 1, Then this coming weekend, a couple of games on Saturday. No face-off time confirmed as of yet in the M56 Cup between Deeside and Widnes. 2 league games though on Saturday. Hull take on Blackburn at 5:30 and Sheffield take on Nottingham in their local derby at 4:40 p.m. over at Ice Sheffield. Sunday then, the Billingham Stars are back in action. Will they put another ridiculous amount of goals on the Widnes Wild at 5:30 at the Forum? Their cup final opponents Blackburn take on Hull at 6 p.m. In Lancashire. A 7:20 p.m. face-off for the Lions and the Scimitars. They go home and home this weekend. That, of course, will be live on the Lions YouTube channel from 7:20. And then the last game to talk about from North 1 on Sundays at 5:30 p.m. The Solihull Barons and the Deeside Dragons. Can the Barons rebound from their disappointing loss in the Cup semi-final this past weekend? North 2, of course, returns to league action. This coming weekend. Good few games on Saturday in the league. The Billingham Buccaneers will host the Telford Tigers too. Can the Buccaneers keep themselves within shooting distance of third spot with a win against Telford? It'd be pretty surprising if they did. Coventry take on the Nottingham Lions at 7 p.m. at the Skydome. 12:30 p.m. on a Saturday. Fantastic face-off time for the Kingston Sharks and the Altrincham Aces. I'm sure the Aces are going to love that journey up the motorway for that one. And a 7:40 p.m. face-off on Saturday for the Sheffield Titans in their Yorkshire derby against the Brantford Bulldogs. Sunday then, Altrincham take on Billingham in Manchester at 5:45. Bradford at home against Nottingham at 5:30, and a 1 p.m. face-off at Ice Sheffield. Sutton versus Coventry, a big game in the context of who will be the ones to keep pace with Telford, given the fact that the Sting. The Blaze certainly have a 2-game weekend. Important for Coventry to win this one, you think, all things considered. And then we'll have a quick look at South 2. Like I said, we await whatever nonsense comes with the semi-final between Basingstoke and Peterborough. Though the Buffalo are at home twice this weekend. They're at home on Saturday against the Chelmsford Warriors at 6:30 in Basingstoke. Haringey take on the Solent Junior Devils at Alexandra Palace. Will they get a measure of revenge over Harry Cloutman's side, in which will probably be minus a few of those Div 1 guys, given the fact the Devils first team are at home against Streatham on Saturday. Peterborough take on the Oxford Rising Stars at 6:30. And then Sunday, well, it's definitely a league game between Basingstoke and Peterborough. Will it double up as the Cup semi-final? Watch this space. Guildford the Phoenix are at home. They look to rebound from their defeat in Cardiff against the Streatham Blackhawks. Lee Valley take on the Oxford Rising Stars. Potential this one for Lee Valley, given the fact that it's a basement battle in the division. We will see whether the Lions can pick up their 3rd win of the season. Buccaneers versus Tigers 2 confirmed is actually 5:30. The face-off has been confirmed. That's confirmed tonight. Thank you, Karen. 5:15 p.m. face-off for Deeside Dragons website against the Wild. Dipped there for a minute. But this has been a better week for Tech. Do we agree? It's been a better week for the Tech. Either way, we have gone through the whole kit and caboodle, all 5 divisions, all the bits and pieces. Not many games to talk about, but we've got through it somehow, just about. The NHL is covered for another week. Why is this dropping out? I will now be very, very static, and we nearly got through it. We nearly got through it. Are you going to recover, or are you going to be silly? Steelers 4, Blaze 1. Blaze got a goal! The Blaze got a goal. Amazing. God bless them for trying. I want to know why. Oh dear, that's not good. What's happened there? I was wondering what's going on. There we go, that's better. Not sure what happened there. Unsure what's happening with my internet right now. But questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, anything anybody wants to chuck in. Slightly shorter show this week, of course. Because there isn't as much stuff to talk about. Just having a look. It's dropping in and out really, really crazily for no reason. It's been fine the entire show, and then out of nowhere, it's just pooing the bed. But, either way, clubs that don't submit game sheets in a timely fashion. How is it not addressed by the EIH? Nottingham Lions 2 have still not made a game sheet from the 21st of January available to anyone. Ridiculous. Yeah, not good. They should really fine them. And then if they still refuse to comply, they should eventually be docked points, I think is probably the only way to describe that. But yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense why they just get away with it. Third period underway in all. We'll have a quick squiz. We'll get the things back up just to make sure there's no other news. I know the Sharks are doing, of course, the Solway, of course, are doing another one of their watch parties on their away weekend, being away against MK, and then away at Telford, of course, be a tough one for them, but a good way to get folks involved. Colin, if you won £130 million in the Euro Millions, would you invest in your club and take to the EIHL or stay and win things in the NIHL? Just something my dreams brought up a few nights ago. If I won 130 million quid, I'm buying the rink and I'm redoing it. I need to have a rink for my team to be in first, I think, before I do anything else. Interested to hear what other people think about. If Basingstoke wasn't an option, I wouldn't necessarily put a team straight into the Elite League because it would depend where I'd go. For me, if I was going to invest in a team, I'd want to invest in a team that had the potential for growth in that sense. And for me, there's a couple of teams where that potential for growth, where there's more room to do it, as it were. One of those teams is, in terms of what, taking something and kind of building on what's there. Romford, I think, is an option because there's a lot of space, a lot of people in East London to kind of to point yourself and attract yourself out to. Not necessarily Solway themselves because they obviously wouldn't want. No, I mean they may want investment, but the issue is Solway is the size of the rink. I think that's got the potential for growth. That would be an investment in. It'd be interesting investment wise. Would be the Coventry Blaze. So they're already in the Elite League, but of course have slowly kind of slipped down towards the bottom end. But I think with the right coach and some good investment, I think they could do some good bits. Another team that that would be interesting to put money into would be the Slough Jets, because I would be interested to see what Lucas Smithell coaching could do with some real money behind it, with a view to taking them from South 1 to the National with a really solid business plan. Both you and I, Richard, of course, are very familiar with Slough as a developmental place. The opportunities are there. Still 4-2, 45 minutes gone in Hull. 2 goals does not feel enough, though, does it? 2-goal cushion doesn't feel enough right now. But no, yeah, like I say, we're obviously in that free zone, the free zone where everyone we're in the free zone where you can just kind of chat about whatever you want, just chuck things in. We obviously won't hang around just for time immemorial for the sake of it. But yeah, like I say, we just had fewer stuff to talk about this week. But obviously, great that it's not been a complete disaster this week tech-wise as it has been in the past. We got through most of the show without a problem. With £130 million, I would like to build a full-size rink in Bracknell so the bees can go home. I don't think that would necessarily be a terrible idea, Gary. Actually, that wouldn't be too bad of a thing to do. Obviously, Danny Myers has shown that he can run bits and pieces. So getting him on board, kind of expanding the ozone, as it were, would be an idea. But yeah, getting the bees back in Bracknell, I think, would solve a lot of issues both for the bees and for the Jets. But we don't live in a fantasy world in our heads. We live in the world that we've got. So you have to kind of deal with what we've got on that front. We have dates. We have dates. So it's the weekend of the 24th and the 25th of February, which is the one that's set aside for the Cup final weekends. But this has been confirmed in North 1. Saturday the 24th of February, 6 p.m. at the Blackburn Ice Arena. And Sunday the 25th at the Forum in Billingham at 5:30 p.m. for the North 1 Cup final between the Billingham Stars and the Blackburn Hawks. That is locked in as of a couple of minutes ago. Basis of proposal, Anthony, planning application. So a lot of people have seen some bits and pieces to do with this about the council's aquadrome proposal, and also like a bunch of things that they're sort of tagging on at the end to kind of consider, one of which was an ice rink. That is the council throwing the ice community in Basingstoke a bit of a bone if the current rink cannot, if there is no solution with the current rink, with the sort of impasse between Planet Ice and Standard Securities and Planet Ice buying back the lease at the moment. The council own the aquadrome, so where the council own the land that the rink is on, they don't own the building and they don't operate it, so they always say, we can't get involved. I don't necessarily believe that 100%. I think they could do more in terms of pressuring both sides to find a solution. But the council own the aquadrome, and the aquadrome is slowly edging towards its end of life anyway. It used to be a Lido, is now kind of more of a standard swimming pool-esque kind of thing. So the fact that the council are looking at these bits and pieces isn't unreasonable. The fact that they've dangled the carrot of the ice arena in there is interesting, and they are asking for people to speak at the sort of public council meeting before too long. I am not eligible to do so because I do not live. Alex Lee, who I know is standing at the moment to try and get the Labour nomination to be their candidate in the general election, has been very vocal and very forward on supporting the rink. So and others who are in this newer council regime, Councillor Paul Harvey, I know, who's the leader of the council, has always been very, very on board with bits and pieces in the past. But being the head of the council is a different kettle of fish from the inside than the out. And obviously the man has a lot of responsibilities to kind of juggle. I feel better about this current regime of the council. I still feel they could be doing more and should be doing more, but they are doing immeasurably more than the previous administration did do, and I don't think there's an argument on that from people within the borough who, and from without the borough who keep close eye on Basingstoke, things like I do. It's a long way off, but it's the fact that it's there is enough of a crack in the door for people to start shouting about it and do more about it. I think that's very, very important, and I think it's a start. It's a start. So we'll have to work that one out, I think, is the short version on that. Knights to the power play, I see. Sam Towner with a tripping penalty. But yeah, questions, comments, anything else anybody wants to chuck in, please do. Please do. Always interested to hear, like I say, hear people's thoughts and feelings and everything. Just still frantically checking around for any other news. Not tons that I can. Not immediately loads leaping out of me. So just quickly flicking through the news for bits and pieces. Not tons that I can see. A lot of people on my hockey feed talking about F1, which is slightly funny. But I get why, of course, with the big announcement out of F1 today. Not tons I can see. Knights on a 5-on-3. Finn Ulrich hitting the crossbar, which is not what you want. How crucial will that prove come the end? How quick will MK sell out their 2 blocks for Coventry tomorrow morning? Probably really quick. I still don't believe MK should have more than they've been given. But yeah, MK traditionally turn up for the playoff weekend. It's great. It's great to have the Barmy Army there. I think it'd probably be better for the Barmy Army if MK could find a way to win. That's the only thing to say. The only thing to say on that. I'll be really interested, and of course, it's not an impossibility. If MK win the cup, because I don't think they're going to win the league. I think most of us don't think they're going to win the league. What attendance will be like for MK if they come to Coventry with a trophy in their pocket? Because I felt last year that MK fans came in quite nervous, more nervous than happy for some time. It'd be really interesting to see what the Lightning fans are like coming in with a trophy already in the pocket. The Knights score to make it 4-3. Mac Howlett again, his second of the night, and the lead is cut to 1. And that's definitely not enough of a lead against the Leeds Knights in a two-legged tie, that's for sure. Can Hull hold on? I think becomes the big question. We won't have... There we go, sort of returned back to normal there. But yeah, anything else anybody wants to kind of chuck in? Do we like the new graphics though? Are we forgetting that Hull have already won at the Castle this season? No, but Leeds under pressure. That's the thing I'd say in response to that, Jamie. That's the only thing I would say in response to that. It's a tough one, though. It is a tough one. Can Hull do it? Of course they can. We've seen from this year that they've got that streak of, they've got the bit between their teeth this year, and it's such an impressive performance compared to last year for Hull. But yeah, they've obviously they've beaten MK quite handily. They've beaten Leeds in Leeds. But what was the response from Leeds the next night? Slapped them 5-0. I want to say it was 5-0 in Hull the following evening. So I think we're gonna have we'll call time on that one. Better tech night, new graphics and stuff. Going to try some bits and pieces kind of going forward. Hopefully it will be okay. But we will see what happens. We'll call it there. Bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, your number one source for all things related to the NIHL. Follow me on my journey across hockey with the Banners on the Road series. Like I say, I think I'm probably going to be in Gosport on Saturday. So that'll be Solent versus Streatham, which will be the way forward on that one. If that changes, I'll let you know. Certainly changed on Sunday, didn't it? But of course, there's all those whole seasons there to read, as well as our Hockey Story series, long form pieces of content, both in written and audio visual form, going all the way through history from the 19th century to the present day, behind the Iron Curtain, into war and beyond, players, officials, coaches, owners, all kinds of bits and pieces. All of that's on the website to check out, as well as the back catalogue of the old BOTW podcast and our free to download tabletop ice hockey game, Dice Hockey. You can play it with bits and pieces around your house, and it is free to download. All I ask is that if you do download it and you do enjoy it, please do consider chucking a few quid towards Parkinson's UK. But that is Parkinson's is crap, and it'd be great to put some money towards research and a cure. But all of that is there at bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. Facebook.com/bannersonthewall. If you like getting your news to your Facebook feed, everything that goes on the website, bunch of different bits and pieces, all go onto the Facebook page for you to check out. Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, is at BannersOTW. That's the best place to keep tabs on me. In the description, so you can go check them out down there. That's the joy of YouTube. And of course, the other big thing being on YouTube, feed the algorithm hamster. Keep him fat and well loved. Like the video, share it out, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, hit that notification bell. It all helps with kind of getting this sort of seen and viewed by more people. That'd be massively appreciated. But of course, the other thing as well is we are the number one live show for all things NIHL. Wednesday nights, 8 PM, the What's Current stream. thank you for joining us Wednesday nights as you have done across the entire season, and we will be here until the end of the current campaign. But there we are. The Cup semi-finals are to one side, sort of, unless you're South 2 and we don't know what we're doing there. But most of it is all sorted out. The finals are slowly edging our way towards that. We've got a full weekend's worth of fixtures across all 5 divisions coming this weekend. There's great hockey for everybody. The one thing I reminded myself of from MK versus Oxford on Sunday, the 2 teams at the bottom of South 1, the 3rd tier of British ice hockey, and it was a better game than I've seen in divisions at times in divisions above it this year. I will die on the hill of the idea when people say to me that the NHL isn't good quality, isn't entertaining, isn't value for money. Get to Oxford, get to Billingham, get to Hull, get to Telford, get to Romford, get to Gosport, get to Bristol. Don't tell me it's not entertaining. Get in the rink and watch it. I appreciate that might be harder for Belfast fans, but I will, just like Elite League hockey is entertaining, there is entertainment from Leeds to Lee Valley, from Sheffield to Solent. There's quality everywhere if you go and find it. Be happy, and if you can't be happy, then wherever you are, please do everything you can. Please do be safe. As my friend Scotty Woods would say, take care of yourself and somebody else. For bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, this is Anthony Russell saying stay safe, and so long till next time. Have a good weekend wherever you are. Hopefully this time when I wake up from my nap, the game will